I want to greet all Fambulem, 7 point some more million of us, we compatriots, a happy 60th independence anniversary coming from the Then and Now platform. Today, the 27th, the actual way Salonga in birthday, 60 years old today. This is now a presenter, Prince Emil Kroma on the Then and Now platform Media Empire. They come with a very special sister where we want to talk about a few things on independence. Also, I'll be out earlier on and that clip they come, we'll go speak to different Sierra Leoneans then from different walks of life, different ages, different gender. That clip they come on Friday, we'll compile them and bring them on Friday. Today we want to talk about independence, we want to talk about governance, we want to talk about women's leadership and the way forward 6 years on. For help we for chat this path tonight on the very day of independence, it's a former honorable. Woman, we don't sit down at the host, who say things and they happen. I always call her host the host of the people. This woman also don't be a government minister. So this woman, not a small woman, a woman will understand. She's been there, she's heard it, she's seen it. I don't know whether I'm all, but maybe it will help you for understand what she's done so far. Sister Isata Kabia now we guest tonight, and probably I go yield the floor to Randa. It tell me a little bit more because maybe I'm not complete when we get woman of this stature on our platform. Sister Isata Kabia, welcome to the Then and Now platform, and it's over to you. Maybe you want to tell family a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me, Prince. Especially on this day, I don't know really. I've even put on my profile when I post. I don't know what I do for deserve this. To actually have an opportunity to have a conversation with Sierra Leone on her birthday. I don't able to imagine, I'm even like 1 week ago. So I want to tell you plenty thank you for being open and for allowing me this particular opportunity to speak to Sierra Leone, basically. And as they launch right now the show, I want to wish Sierra Leone a very, very happy 60th birthday. Not to me for tell somebody say you get the right for celebrate or not. Not to me for tell somebody how it for celebrate, because everybody gets a different relationship with the country. And even though we get a collective understanding about the way forward, even though we share a collective history, which they unite we and bring we together, but we contribution is individual. So everybody gets in way how you want to contribute, and therefore that particular relationship with the country now one-on-one, and nobody not will dictate them for you. For me, today don't be a very great opportunity for reflect. A great reflection, not a celebration. And year after year, not just this year, different people and they ask, what have we got to celebrate? So I guess it depends on where you sit on the governance spectrum for make you decide, say, you wear black on independence or you wear green, white, and blue on independence. It's personal. It's allowed. There's freedom of speech and there's freedom of association. That's the beauty of democracy. Today, me as a former member of parliament and former minister, of course, my own relationship with Sierra Leone, self don't change. When you don't dream from being a child, when you don't dream for serve your country, and you don't know in which capacity, because from the very young age of 8, when I left Sierra Leone, I not be ever one go. And people in my family would say, I cry, I try for hide, I don't know, able to go London. And this was at 8 years old. So at 16, I found way back to Sierra Leone for a visit. And that 16-year-old girl, I think then the love of Sierra Leone really starts. So my relationship after that is always based on that one single holiday, that one single vacation. When I come here at 16 years old, and I don't want to go back to London at all. I don't find my way back on vacation several times until finally I move back home for leave. So the reflection today, the commemoration, the celebration for some, it's all allowed. But for me personally, there's a great big weight of disappointment. There's a great big weight of promises not fulfilled. And Sierra Leone to me, not to a place, not to location, not to just a country. Sierra Leone now like a living, breathing woman And I don't even equate unto me mama. I equate unto me granny, because Sierra Leone and me grandma, they're like synonymous with each other. Now, because of me granny, now I first come home for visits. Now, because of me granny, I not be ever one left here at 8 years old. And now because of her, I find me way back where I can't live here all these years later. So Sierra Leone is like an old lady, and somebody who don't serve you when you're young, and you say, well, you don't big now, you don't want big woman. You say, if you want to serve them, you want to help them, you want to protect them, you want to guide them. So she's my grandmother for real. And today she's really a granny. She's 60. She's retired. And I want to ask people, if you be retire today at this age, at 60 years old, is this the kind of retirement you would want for yourself? So those who think they're celebrating, if they're honest and they start to look inward, is this the kind of retirement they would like for themselves at 60 years old? Is this the kind of way forward you'd like as an old person, where maybe now you don't get opportunity for work again, somebody get for work for you, on a pension you live on? What kind of retirement would you want for yourself? And what kind of retirement do you want for this old, beautiful lady at 60?
Yes. What kind of retirement you want for this beautiful old lady at 60? So we don't hear briefly from the guest. And so most people always have been by now, it would be surprising as to how they don't present the opening part of this particular program. So this is Sierra Leone at 60. We just begin with independence, and we just weigh in on reflection about what this independence mean. And from what we can judge from what he say, these are not our expectations. As Sierra Leoneans, we do expect more. What particularly, Madam Isata Kabia, are you disappointed with as a citizen? Like, you left the country at the tender age of 8, miss your grandma so much, and one of the reasons that when you return, but you become, some way along the way, a very high-profile person as I speak to you today. Like I say, you've been there, you've seen, you've heard. What are the disappointments where you go register? Let's talk about specifics, if you will, please.
Yeah, today I would like to register my disappointment with leadership in particular, because I know the importance of leadership. When they talk about 7.2 million people, and of course, every single one of us beyond the age of 16 has something to contribute, has something they can do to bring grace or disgrace to our country. Every individual, there is no small person. Every person is a person, no matter how small. So there is no small person, and everybody has their own way to give grace to Sierra Leone or to bring disgrace to Sierra Leone. But the importance of leadership is not because we are looking for a hero. It's not because we're dependent on one single man or woman, but the sphere of influence that that single man or woman has means that they can actually contribute more than an ordinary citizen. They have more opportunity for influence than an ordinary citizen. As leadership, you can influence a whole nation. Some people have small leaders in their communities, and you can influence your community, your household, your village, your town. It's true. But on a national level, it's like the buck stops with you. And leadership is something that you don't define. You don't say, I'm looking for this person. It's not a physical definition. So it's not like he or she is tall or short or round or square, but they are characters that we witness that say to us, this is leadership. When you witness leadership, you know. And when you witness a failure of leadership, when you witness a lack of leadership, you also know. And in the darkest hour, that is where leadership reveals itself. When something of a crisis occurs, you have people who step forward and take charge. I remember when we had the mudslide. I was then Minister of State in Foreign Affairs, and I woke up to that news on the radio. I didn't think that it was right for me to put on my Bamako and go to work. As a citizen, as a responsible citizen who has some knowledge of emergency response, I went straight to the site. And when I got there, luckily I was there. So I showed up hoping that whoever was in charge would have a second pair of hands to command, somebody to say to me, do this and do that and take this and fetch this. I didn't expect to become commander number 2. And our current mayor of Freetown was commander number 1. So I met her at ground zero. This is where she used to live. Her old apartment was in that area. So when I showed up, both of us took charge, dealing with the international community, dealing with the disaster response management. I set up the computer system where they started to log people on. Because before I arrived, they were dragging people out of the mud and sending them up the hill to wherever they were going, to houses or to other facilities. Nobody was registering them. We started registering them when I arrived. We actually set up an emergency response center. So there was a medical room, and then MSF and other medical personalities showed up, and they started to treat what they could. And then what was beyond their treatment, they sent those people to the hospital. And by 3 or 4 o'clock, when State House called and they needed numbers, we could actually tabulate numbers because we had started taking them. So when we dragged people out of the mud, those who could speak, we asked them, how many people in your home? So we could actually get a sense of who might still be left trapped down there. So leadership is not something they tell you to do. Leadership is action you take when the time arises. How much more important is leadership when it's bestowed on you at a national level through a national election? That means really the end all and be all is with you. People look to you for influence, people look to you for action, and people look to you for advice. More importantly, children look to you to emulate. So we have to decide, is this the kind of person, are these the kind of people that we want our children to emulate? Is this the kind of character that we want to reflect in our country so that somebody else can take it up and become that? Character reveals itself in a moment of crisis. And it's not that you become somebody else in a crisis, you become who you truly are. Your character is just revealed.
Okay. Brilliantly said, and we go really come to that, Madam Kabia. I do promise the audience that. Fambulen, for those of you who are just joining the platform, today, na Sierra Leone Independence Day. Today makes Sierra Leone 60 years old. Sierra Leone is officially 60 years old. And thought-provoking question has been asked, what is there to celebrate? Should we be celebrating in the first place? And if we are, what are we celebrating? Today, for help you for understand all of this, plus more, we get a very special guest. We happen for them be a honorable. We serve in the House of the People, the House of Parliament in Sierra Leone. And she was also a government minister. She's none other than Madam Isata Kabia. Keep the mix the name. Apologies. I still want to press on with independence, okay? Because now this auspicious day now we get today, and the center of the conversation is around independence. So there is this diverse views, different views, Madam Kabia, on independence. Some people will say we for celebrate, some people will say we're not for celebrate. Why we for celebrate and why we not for celebrate? I wonder why we get this diverse view. So in your own opinion, even though you don't touch on a little bit, why is this argument between celebrate and not? And what is your expectation, or are your expectations of a country which is independent?
So I think the only reason, or maybe one of the reasons why we don't have an agreement of whether for celebrate or not for celebrate, because we have not established a common minimum. We not establish a common minimum. So for some people, maybe this is okay. I don't know why, but for some, maybe this is okay. And for those of us who want her, Sierra Leone, to reach her full potential, this is not okay. Those of us who want her to be, we want her to be complete now. We want her to be polished now. We want her to be shining now. We want her to be the diamond, not in the rough. So this is not okay for us. Some people may think that this.
So waiting at the completeness, waiting at the shining, waiting at taking it away from the rough diamond to the polished diamond. Broken down for we, because many people will subsequently listen to what you say.
Sierra Leone na country where gets everything where it need inside alone. We don't need anything from outside. Whether it's human resources or natural resources, we have it all. And a lot of Africa and beyond, when they encounter them internationally, they're confused, and they're still confused as to why, up to this point, we're still not able to reach this potential where everybody they talk about. What is this potential? Because in the past, when we've been there as a British colony, we were the colony supreme. Everything was centered here, including education, including civil service training, including the gentry where we give colonial masters. So after leaving us to our own devices, after giving us independence and sovereignty, people expect now, say, we go take charge of all what we get and harness them in service of country. But if we continue to serve the interest of a small group, if we continue to serve our own personal and private interest, even though we're in public service, then of course we're going to continue to move backwards. Somebody said today that we're standing still, and standing still is tantamount to moving backwards because every other country is moving forward. So you're bound to be left behind. And Sierra Leone, to me, as I say, the beauty where we get, we not even speak of them. A lot of the world only knows us as a civil war country, because when the media, with all its power, fell upon us to report on the bad news, it's the bad news that's carried on in the world. How about we take time now to change the narrative so we can tell a different story about Sierra Leone, not even in the next 60 years, even in the next 5 years, it's possible, as long as we put a concerted effort together and everybody's on board. But for now, those who are here for private gain, the story has been told. It's obvious. We've seen the results of the thieving and the looting. Those who are here for public service are usually not even encouraged, because it seems to be that is not the ultimate goal. So how do we make Sierra Leone's potential, Sierra Leone reaching her full potential, how do we make that the single mission of all Sierra Leoneans?
Okay, Madam Kabia, just a quick one. Some people will say that depending on how they see things, that it sounds a little bit rich. This is a former member of parliament, except what she's saying now only started yesterday. Then obviously the blame lies on the doorstep of a particular side. But some will be saying that even during the time that you served in government, there was this corrupt practices and etc. And if this were the case, I don't know whether you will agree with that. What was your position then?
So for me, I have been in government and I'm now in opposition. And those are two sides of the same coin, because those of us who believe in the democratic principles know that both of those services are one and the same. So the service I gave to government was important. The service I give in opposition is equally or maybe even more important. Giving voice to the issues is a responsibility of all citizens, but it's more a responsibility for those who want to serve public. If we are about developing Sierra Leone, then it's not about blaming and it's not about taking sides. It's about pointing out the issues regardless of which side of the fence you sit on. So my job when I was in government was to advise government, which I did. My job in opposition is to advise government, which I'm doing. And both of those are equally important to me. And I don't see this as a favor. Somebody give me an opportunity to free speech. It's not a favor. It's my right within a democracy, unless we want to say that this is not a democracy.
Yes, okay. Well said, do like that. So therefore, let we move into governance then. So when you talk about governance, because it cannot intertwine, independence and the people that we govern, the governors and the governed. Will you please make us for understand waiting at the difference and waiting the govern supposed for do, the governor supposed for do for the govern, and waiting at the relationship. Is it symbiotic? Is it break and down for we vis-a-vis the govern and the governors and the expectations of either side?
I do believe, again, if we're talking about responsibility, everybody has their own responsibility. So as the governed, it's our job to actually elect those who are going to govern. How do we make those choices? This is a case in point where in Africa in general, Sierra Leone in particular, we make our choices based on the familiar. I am going to vote for Prince because I know him. And it's not because I trust Prince, it's just because I don't trust the system. So if there's a rogue political system, I'm more likely to vote for somebody that I know, somebody who's familiar, somebody who's my tribesman, somebody that I have something in common with, regardless of the fact that if that person is good for my governance or not, regardless of if that person is going to be good for my country or not. So the systems we've set up in our political democracy is what has actually led us to this. Now, the elected officials, on the other hand, they are being voted for not by people who understand the issues, but by people to whom they make themselves familiar. So if I want to be elected and I don't have anything to offer my people, I am going to go to my town, my village, my region, and I'm going to say to them, vote for me because I come from here. Vote for me because you know me. I have nothing else to offer. And maybe in addition to that, I'll go with a bag of rice. This is the kind of insulting behavior that the political class has continued to put up towards the electorate. And unfortunately, if you don't have a voice because you see yourself as powerless, you're more likely to fall for this trap. And it is just that, it's a trap. There's the people who have the power to choose, to make the choice, should use that power wisely instead of giving it away and then taking poison for 5 years. We're now in a situation where there's a lot of grumble, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of complaint. Do you think that could have been avoided? This current situation, was it avoidable? And it could have been avoided if people were thinking that their voice and their vote is not just about one day, it's actually a process that continues to affect their lives for 5 years, which is what they're experiencing now. And if we are able to awaken this particular set of electorates, maybe this is something we'll be able to carry forward in next elections to ensure that we make better choices. The responsibility is with both the governed and the governors, but the sphere of influence that we spoke about earlier puts the responsibility of development squarely on those in charge. If you are in charge and you take charge, then we know you're here to make. If you are in charge and you're just busy taking, then you're just here to take. And our politics has shown the difference over a period of 60 years, where in various degrees we've had people who are better at service than others, where we've had better leadership than others. And we're not saying it's been a linear relationship in development, but why do we keep going back and forth? We want to get to a point finally where we take 2 steps forward this year and 2 steps forward next year. And even if it's just 2 steps, we're okay with that as long as we don't take 10 steps back the following year. Let's continue now on a trajectory of development, however slow, but let's be deliberate about it. Let's be deliberate about the choices we make to select or elect people to govern us. Let's be deliberate about the choices we make as to who can actually stand for elections. There's certain people who just should not qualify. How do we qualify the people who we choose to have govern us? What makes it so that anybody qualifies? My age qualifies me, according to the Constitution. But should it just be about my age? Why aren't we so particular about other criteria that can have such an adverse effect on our country in the short and the long term? Why should we leave it open? By now, after 60 years as a sovereign and so-called independent state, which I don't agree with, how do we start now to make the deliberate choices and educated and enlightening people who are going to make that choice to make sure they know the enormity of the choice they're about to make?
Many thanks for that, Madam. If we were to say, like, because we were talking about issues of governance, which you elucidated on very, very well, but this is not to refer to structures and processes we are designed for we leadership them into accountability and the transparency process, but then you get the leadership on top who makes the decision. Yes, people goes to, and go to the ballots, they vote for people them and put them there. And when they put them there, the responsibility becomes that of the people listening to you for, the elected officials for 5 years. For 5 years. So the people will have done their own stuff that they're supposed to do. After they don't do that done, is it not the part of the elected officials for do their own part of the bargain? Because it's a kind of social contract between, again, the governed and the governors, or vis-a-vis the governors and the governed. Break down once more the responsibility. Who is actually responsible? We don't say both sides responsible, but the people then take the action and then vote once. Madam Isata Kabia don't come, they don't provide one bag rest, and somebody make a decision and vote on him. And that person they did it for 5 years. 5 years of that person there in life. They are try for explain this to me, because I sure see they try for conscientize the minds of other people listening to you that going forward, it should not be business as usual.
Yeah, so I'm thinking like with this conversation, which not just the beginning, with a hope for establish a business unusual scenario in Sierra Leone.
I like that, business unusual.
Yes, instead of business as usual. And how do we do that? Imagine after 60 years, some people who were alive and of voting age in 1961 may no longer be with us. But there's some people who fortunately are still here and they have a lot of lessons to give. And some people who were born in 1961, who are now 60, along with Mama Salone, also have a wealth of information and education to share. So we're not operating in a vacuum. The lessons of the past should inform our future decisions and actions. How has it served us in the last 10 cycles of elections that voting for somebody because of a bag of rice or voting for somebody because of a common language, how is that doing for you? And why do we keep repeating the mistakes? Why is that something that somebody needs to educate somebody on at this moment in time? When you vote for one bag rice, you get the angel at the chair. It's all rosy. When you get the devil at the chair after you don't eat your one bag rice, 5 years now, really long time. A really long time. So when you experience that long time, they're gonna say, next time I'm not gonna do so again. Next time I go vote now based on issues. Because if you sit down and you complain, say you don't get light. If you sit down and you complain, say you don't get money, you don't get a business, you don't get job, or you be don't sell that opportunity for make you get you light and your job and you be don't sell for one bag rice, or maybe even less than that. And we're using the bag rice as an analogy because there are cases where it actually happens. So how do we get those who know better to do better? How do we get those who actually know the difference between voting for issues and voting for rice to actually educate and help us take this message across the country so that next time we're not going to fall into this trap of short-sightedness, of immediate gains and benefits, where we're going to hold out for a long-term vision by having a visionary leader and a responsible government that would actually be there to serve community. The thing about governance and politicians, beyond their mandate, they really have a reach just based on their charisma and their presence on a national stage. So the responsibility they have is enormous. When we talk about responsibility, I, as a citizen who is not in governance, I'm doing what I can in my own corner because I equally have a responsibility to contribute to Sierra Leone's development in whatever way I can. But the responsibility of government is so much larger, And I think if we are really to analyze that, it's to say that those who have chosen to serve through politics, if indeed they are practicing moral courage, they are the most patriotic of citizens. If you choose to serve your community through politics and you do it well, as a national service, it's the best example of practicing moral courage. This, in fact, is the ultimate patriotism. But when it's done in the way that we have suffered through it for so many years, where people come into public service for private gain, it's a shame. It's an embarrassment. It's a disappointment. And it's a complete breakdown of the social contract you spoke about earlier. So citizens do have the responsibility for sure, but those of us seeking to be elected have the ultimate responsibility to serve Sierra Leone faithfully for those 5 years of our mandate.
Yes, I like the way how you end them, and I want to pick up from there. On the same issue of governance, Madam Kabia, for serve faithfully. But this has been the case for, let we forget about beyond the war, let we talk about post-war, 5 elections, democratic elections, and a responsibility on the part of either side, the governed and the governors once again. So the governed, una the politician then come, una win the governors their mind, probably based on policies where we know they vote largely on, but on waiting you get for tell them, and that aura, that persona, that charisma that we talk about, such as you, for example, well-spoken, sound well-polished. So if you are on a stage, if you're given a stage, I have no doubt that after you will have spoken, you will be so convincing that people are going to vote for you because you will have made many promises. So then it does end on that sincerity, let's serve faithfully. But we know that most politicians are not on the basis of we get the benefit of hindsight, because after 5 years, it's something different. What are people supposed to do? Because when they vote you into power,
because those issues would empower them. Why would we not want to empower our people if we want to serve them better? Because if we have an enlightened electorate, they can hold us to account. So that's why I said voting and then going home does not fulfill your responsibility as a voter, as the governed. As the governed, within that 5 years, you have to hold your elected officials to account. That is also your responsibility. And if you have made a fair deal at the point of elections and you have not sold your vote for a bag of rice, if you had made a fair deal and actually participated in a fair process, then you know that you have the right, not just the responsibility, but you have the right to hold them to account. And you're supposed to ask based on those promises and make sure those promises are not fake. How can you release a manifesto and then 3 years after the fact you say, now you're going to study the issues? Why did you release a manifesto that professed to know my problems and actually promised to fix them? It's not right. And after 60 years, this is a cycle that we are not willing to repeat, and we have to make it clear.
Okay. So why would you produce a manifesto 3 years on? You cannot keep to the manifesto. Instead, now you say you are going to study the issues in the manifesto. So let me keep them real at this particular point in time. We are talking about the government in town. You know, they produce a manifesto, and 3 years on, they are now asking the people that we are going to do an understudy of which will be put inside the manifesto. If that's what we are talking about, Madam Kabia, this is insincerity on the highest level. Will you agree with that characterization?
It's a complete letdown. It's more than a disappointment. It's a complete break of trust. And what we're trying to do in building a democracy is to ensure that people trust the process. They should trust that their vote means something. They should trust that their voice after voting means something. And they should trust that they have the right to use their responsibility to hold those in office to account. And if you break down the elements of trust within that system, you are actually depriving us of the strength in democracy, because those people next time are less likely to participate. If they do, they're less likely to trust that their voice is honestly recorded and counted. And they are less likely to trust that something good can actually come out of their votes. And that is where you usually get a country that disintegrates into non-democratic states because they no longer trust the process of voting and electing officials.
Brilliant. Many thanks for that. I want to press on one more thing on the issue of governance. Of course, we will come back to Ram before moving into some other segment on this particular program. But so far, the program is going well. And Fambulena, they ask una continue for share. Una please continue for share because this is quite important. We always say on this platform, the national conversation has begun. But we cannot carry on this conversation without you. It takes two. We don't want a monologue. They could not see me and the guest. We are having a conversation, and you are the observers, you are the witnesses, and this is about we country. And on today, the 27th of April, 60 years ago, the country, the timeline, the discussion tonight is centered around this particular country in West Africa, about 7.2 million or 7 point some more million people, okay, where they celebrate the 60-year anniversary in different ways. Some not agree with the celebration, some happy about the self-determination of our people as enshrined in the United Nations Charter and etc. But some are not happy at all on the basis that they physically they feel say nothing that they filter down to them. And for help we for understand all of this tonight, it's a very powerful lady. And when I say powerful, I mean them, because checking in biography, apart from which he don't serve as an honorable member of Parliament of the Republic of Sierra Leone, away from that as a government minister, and now engaged in many other social justice advocate issues then around the world, in which some of her works have been endorsed and championed and promoted by none other but another strong woman advocate in the person of former Liberian President Helen Johnson Sirleaf. But we'll come to that shortly. Madam Kabia, thank you so much, and so far and so good. But here is where we stand. I want to see whether I'm able to play a short video clip. I might miss it, but I hope it does play. If it play, then we will take the cue from there and see what do we take from this particular video clip we want for play. There are many of it on my desk, yeah? Many of it around my desk. And Fambulendia, una bear with me while I try to find this video clip. We don't prepare already. I see something like the clip. So let me pay attention. Fambulen una continue for share. I think say I found the clip. I believe so that I found it. The video thumbnails are minimized to optimize full screen video clip screen sharing. Okay, I think now the clip this, but the thumbnail is bad. The thumbnail is bad. Let me go back to screen sharing. Let me see whether I go make any progress. But this is the video where we be one show on a Fambulem. Let me.
Good morning, compatriots.
Okay, yes, it
My
does
name
play.
is Francis.
Madam Kabia, you hear?
I am Renaissance. The Sierra Leone Renaissance movement has called on fellow Sierra Leoneans to wear black on Monday. We call it Black Monday. It's the Monday where we are supposed to show our dissatisfaction at the way the country has been run. Since independence to date, the Sierra Leonean has had a life that is less than what we would desire. We wake up in the morning worrying about the basic things that the rest of the world has forgotten. We worry about electricity, we worry about water supply, we worry about food, we even worry about security. Successive governments have failed us. This is the time for the Sierra Leonean to refuse to accept less and request more. We have to show our leaders that poverty is not a way of life. It is something which is man-made, and men all over the world have fought to change it. In Sierra Leone, it seems things cannot get better. Why? Why do people vote governments? Governments are voted to make the lives of their people better. If they cannot make their lives better, then that is a failure of social contract. And when there is a failure of social contract, the counterparties, in this case, who are the people, need to demand from the governments that what is done is not what was agreed. We have to stand up for what we believe in. We cannot reject, we cannot accept this way of life. We have to reject it. In recent times, the economy has been destroyed. Inflation is galloping. The dollar has moved from 4,300 yuans in 2013 to 7,300 yuans in 2016. Inflation is something around 12.5%. Few days ago, even fuel, which underscores the basic movement of people to engage in economic activity, has moved from 3,750 yuans to 6,000 yuans. Why? How do they expect people to live? That is why we in the Renaissance movement are calling on Sierra Leoneans to wear black. The black is to show that the colors that have led us have failed us. Now in Sierra Leone, black is the new red. We are not ready to accept less. I thank you.
Right, Fambulem. Very interesting times. What an irony, how time changes. And I know we'll go deep into around because we'll watch them and we'll get a guest and we'll give the guest the opportunity for analyze, assess, evaluate that short clip the way we watch of a former ordinary citizen turned ACC boss. And imagine what all he say. And like I say again, I will left this with the guest. Yes, Madam Kabia, you did watch the brief tape out there. I've
seen that video so many times, and even at the point when it happened, I was a government minister. So, and the freedom that he had to organize a protest about things that he felt dissatisfied about was the winning, was the triumph of our democracy, that he had the space, he had the freedom to do that. And the beauty of freedom of association, which is protected within our democracy, is that you can choose which political party you wish to associate with. You can choose freely to be a member of any political party in our party politics. Now, of course, Ben Kaifala has been appointed by the political party which he chose to associate with. And now he finds himself in a bind because he can no longer protest the fact that rice is now 300,000+ per bag, or that the hardship he was fighting for or against at that time has now doubled. He can no longer honestly voice his opinion about the doubling of our inflation rate or the doubling of our exchange rates for the Leone. But if you are free to associate, you don't need to hide. Tell us, I'm a member of such and such, and you'll still be allowed to wear your black on Independence Day. It's disingenuous to pretend to be one thing when you're another. Be an honest politician. And then maybe the president would not have made the mistake of appointing him to be a person of virtue, to be a person without association with a political party who is responsible to hold his own people to account. What a travesty for the ACC. What a complete failure for us to have an anti-corruption commissioner who is so deeply involved with those he's supposed to monitor that he can't. So at this point in time, if another set of people say, today for independence, we also don't see much to celebrate. We also want to wear black in protest. It's their right. And it's not just a right, it's a responsibility. for responsible democracy for people to voice their opinions. And there's certain things, in fact, that are not opinions, they are facts. If you state the price of rice right now, it's not my personal opinion, it is a fact. If we state the 1 million or 1,200,000 rates for the dollar of the pound to the leon, it is a fact. So if he was dissatisfied with the rate as it was then, we are also dissatisfied with the rate as it is now, and it is our right. So for us, that freedom of association gives you the right to choose a political party and do so honestly. And then it gives us the responsibility to not recognize you as a fair broker in a case where you have to monitor those you're in bed with.
Okay, Honourable Kabia, many thanks, but let's push on that little bit more, because I want a little bit of clarity for we listening public. Was he right then? The question is straightforward. Was he right then in terms of waiting if they try for articulate or put forward to the general public, or was he just politicizing a situation, or the situation not be equal to waiting if they promote? And waiting at the contrast, even though you just don't say but I expect more. In other words, adding beef to bone. Waiting have been the situation then, waiting have been the situation now, if we can put a measurement kind of thing to the situation then and now.
So I believe the situation at that time was post-Ebola, possibly, and hardship was there because the economy was stagnating.
Why do you say possibly? You were a government minister then. Some of these dates you can recollect at about the timeline of when he fixed that video there. Was he politicizing? Was it real? Was it Ebola time and then capitalize on that? What was it?
No, I don't want to say he was politicizing. The one thing I do want to establish here is that I'm here to encourage citizen responsibility. I'm not here to blame. And I would like this conversation to engender more hope for our country, more responsibility to our civic education and our civic rights. We want to engender hope, responsibility, and collective action. So this is not about saying somebody's stance or somebody's opinion is not justified. I am not here to tell somebody that they're not justified to protest. I'm here to say that within our democratic right, everybody has that right to protest. And that right was given to him fully. Nobody arrested him for that, nobody stopped him for that, and that is the way it should be. And equally, that is how it should be now. That is my point, and that's the point I want to emphasize. We live in a global civilization now. So even my uncle in a remote village in Sierra Leone may not have full internet connection, but he may have a phone that his son or daughter from the city has bought for him, and he can have access to CNN at certain intervals if he's able to get credit and light, for example. So in the most remote villages that are not fully internet connected, there is still that kind of access to what is happening around the world. And what that does is that we've actually created a global moral code, which means that if we want to benefit from the civilization as it is, accessing automated money, accessing automated information, then we should not reject the other side of it, which means not just accessing, but also inheriting moral codes from external sources. So globally now, if you go on Instagram, something that happens in Nigeria can be protested in America, because when they see it, they are protesting it based on a moral code. So that agreement that we've come to globally also dictates that we, those of us who are going to be criticized, as we were then, because I was in government, should be thick-skinned about the criticism. It's not personal. It's a way to support and assist and help governments to do better. And that is why we say, beyond voting, you have a responsibility to hold government to account throughout their term, as he was doing, regardless of whether it was politicized, regardless of whether it was hiding behind the cloak of black with green under. It does not matter. As a citizen of Sierra Leone, he has a right to a voice, and it was given him. So if we are now trying to argue moral equivalence, or to say this is a different time or that is a different time, it will not wash. What we need to establish is that the moral code applies to everybody. So violence within this political system now is as abominable as it would have been then. And we did not vote in a government to say, well, it happened before, so therefore we can also do it. That is not what we want. We want to get to a point where we can say it happened before and it was no good, and therefore we will refuse to do it now. That is a government of a difference. But if you're here to tell us that you are free to do whatever, whenever, because you're now in charge, that is something we as citizens have to stand up against and make sure it does not, it doesn't start and it doesn't continue. So we're here fighting for the soul of this nation. So regardless of your political coloring, regardless of whether you have political affiliation or not, as a responsible citizen, your job is to make sure that we do better. And we can only do better when we hold our governments to account so they can do better on our behalf.
All right. I want to move on to another thing we're very close to you, heart, where you don't embark on, don't engage on, and looking at the profile, I won't call it extensive or exhaustive research, but just on top of it, just keying your name alone on Google, not on Google Scholar, just Google alone. There's so much material on you. If not photos of you I want, there's plenty of it, beautiful photos of you on just Google alone, and many other materials in terms of the work where you they do. And that work, it gets something to do with women's leadership. In an age where women are becoming ever more and more relevant and powerful, shattering glass ceilings, empowering them, you day right now, that center day. And like I said earlier on, people like Ellen Johnson Sirleaf are one of the one-time Liberian president, now one of the people that really showcase your work. Tell me about this women's leadership so Fambulen will understand who you are, where you stand, what's in a woman leadership, and what you they aspire for attain.
So for me, I don't do an elected office. Even before I was appointed government minister, I come out say, I want to elect me as member of parliament in my own constituency. I didn't get for battle with men because all the other candidates at that time in my constituency were men. But I felt that I had enough courage to take on that particular mission. And there are many women in Sierra Leone who have more experience than I do. They have more education than I do. They have a wealth of knowledge than I do, but they would never venture to take up such a mission because of so many reasons. First of all, the courage. And the courage, I think, is the number one element that we need to give all women. And we can do that by creating an environment of where we actually encourage female leadership. Female leadership is more than just representation. We want to increase representation for sure. We want to increase the numbers in terms of the presence at the decision-making table for sure. But that should not be just for show. Where you get women that were present, they should have the power, they should have enough agency to be able to make critical decisions on behalf of country. And what we found, in fact, is when you have women present at the table, certain conversations that would otherwise not come to the fore are actually being discussed. So health and education and children's welfare becomes more important than infrastructure and coal development like that. We move more into human development, human resources, welfare and management, as long as women are at the table. So in the first instance where women are present, the right conversations are being had. The representation right now for Sierra Leone Parliament, I think, is something like 12%, which is way below the African level of 24%. And of course, it's far, far below what we are requiring, a minimum of 30% representation for women. And there is a reason why we're asking for minimum 30%. And in fact, if I rephrase that, we're asking for a minimum of 30% of any gender. So if the women become 70% and the men are 30, we're okay with that too. But it ensures that we have enough divergent views at the table to come up with the right decisions. You can see sometimes where government comes up with policies and policies are not well implemented, or sometimes they don't get off the page at all because the discussion is fine, the decision is fine, and then the implementation has issues, where the implementation sometimes has not factored in gender, in disaggregated data, has not factored in demographics such as age and differences in rural and urban communities, you're going to have a problem with implementation because all the information is not there. And the right decisions are usually done when women are at the table at the design phase. So you're more likely to get all the right information instead of trying to retrofit it after the fact when you've got the premise all wrong anyway. So it's more than representation. It's about getting women at a point where they can actually make decisions on behalf of communities, countries, and globally. And within this pandemic, we've seen the kind of leadership that has been praised, that has been touted. It's women leadership in countries where we've had very low death rates and very active and robust responses earlier on. Women are in charge. So women's leadership has really won during this pandemic. And it's because really, generally speaking, it's empathetic. Women's leadership has empathy. It's listening, it's consultative. So you get all the information before you make a move. We're not saying that men are not good. We have very good leaders who also happen to be men. But we're saying that your gender is not a reason to eliminate you from the conversation. It's not a reason to eliminate you from the decision. When we spoke earlier, I talked about age. So age qualifies you in our constitution to contest for presidential elections, but it should be more than just being qualified by age. And it should be more than being eliminated by your gender. And we are doing ourselves as a region in Africa, as a country in Sierra Leone, a complete disservice if we continue to disenfranchise women. You have 51% of your population wanting to carry the weight. Why should they not carry the weight? Why should not be a part of the work? You know, we're asking for work. We're not asking for favors. We want to help Sierra Leone flourish. We want to help her be completely polished, like we talked about earlier. So we want to be part of that process of bringing this change. It's not about asking for favors. A friend of mine, a colleague of mine from Chad always used to say, a bird cannot fly with one wing. Sierra Leone is still trying to fly with one wing. Why would you do that?
Yeah. Okay. Cannot fly with one wing. Why would we try to do that? Madam Isata Kabia, you are associated with many other organizations, and we will talk about that briefly because of time. And we go always like for bring you on in Fambulem once again on the Independence Day of Sierra Leone, the 27th of April, 2021, making Sierra Leone 60 years old. We are having conversation with a former government minister in the Republic of Sierra Leone and a member of the Sierra Leonean Parliament, a woman who is well informed, very powerful, and is at the vanguard on the fight on empowering women, them shattering glass ceilings left, right, and center. Madam Kabia, like I said earlier on, you are associated with many organizations who I would like to talk about briefly in this conversation. But there's something where Mr. Biwa understand and probably help for make Fambulem understand as well. There's something associated with you or you associated with called a philosophy. What is exactly a philosophy?
So I started the Afrilosophy venture when I was a member of parliament, and initially working within a mining community. We had in 2013 new jobs created in London mining in Lonsar for mostly men. So London mining was employing mostly men, and they were employing mostly migrant men, which means men who are not usually living in that locality. And mining globally is about migrant communities and migrant workers. And when you are working within a deprived environment, such as my rural town, it a lot of social issues concerning women and girls. For example, in 2013, I had 57 girls dropped out of school due to early pregnancy, teen pregnancy. And 2 of those pregnancies were in primary school. And nobody was arrested, nobody was arraigned, and nothing was done. So justice was not served. And within that period where we had these new men with new money. So it was like we had a community where men had money and women did not. And I, rationalized that this created these new kind of social issues. So to address the social challenges, both for the girls and the women, I embarked on this venture to create enterprises for women. And if the women have jobs, if mothers have jobs or they have businesses that generate income, they can better help the girls. So in service of the girls, we supported mothers. We did training on things such as soap making, cosmetics manufacturing, tailoring, shoe manufacturing, food processing, and some people, and beading and jewelry making. So some people were able to start their own enterprises. Some of our trainees were also employed at the factory so that they could have a salary. We're hoping to create rural enterprises within this scheme and create employers instead of employees. So in an environment where we're dealing with lowly educated or non-educated women, we can hardly expect them to have a CV ready or resume ready in search of a job in an office.
And we see the passion and etc. What is your final word for we Salon people on the 60th anniversary of the country?
So the 60th anniversary, as I open up, was an opportunity today to reflect. And during that reflection, a lot of the points that were discussed here tonight, Nadia, I get them from. So to realize that reflection does not mean a lack of love. Reflection does not mean a lack of commitment. It's a recommitment to Sierra Leone to realize that something different needs to be done, and it needs to be done in a different way. So somebody like me not a social media person, for me to come out here, they're going to say, you don't come and come. And for Sierra Leone, I will do anything. So I'm ready to jump in the deep end with you as long as we do this constructively. How do we work across lines that divide? How do we bring a people together as the first responsibility in serving Sierra Leone? How we go able bring find common ground amongst women, amongst ordinary citizens, and realize that we all they eat cassava leaf, and that is enough even for join me in union as opposed to divide me. The triggers what we don't see during Sierra Leone in civil war, and always in the record at the TRC. It not change, it not different. So nepotism, cronyism, and tribalism is still a trigger of war. So we get for decide say, this not to the people the way we want for be. We did reject that one day, and we did take a different course of action. So would I feel say it will follow we, it will follow we. So if not they organize something at Kailang as women finding common ground and you want to make a come, call me, I am there. I'm here to motivate and inspire, and I hope that you now will take the leadership and we will just provide the support. But for Sierra Leone at 60, we they say even at 61, we want to see something different. And the difference get for start from today. Thank you.
Again, the sister ended up on a very, very high note again. It has to start from today. It has to start from tonight. Depending on whose idea, it could be in the afternoon or in the morning. But the general thing is like in the now, it has to start now. And this is a challenge which she just threw. And indeed, like yesterday, we talked about patriotism, love for country. That's what it means. That selfless desire there for make sure that your country attain, your country aspire, your country win. So it starts now. That's the challenge she's thrown. And remember, she's a woman of substance, and she's thrown the challenge. Take up the challenge. Which I want to understand again, we lost the last bit of the live loop. So we re-loop them again. So when I go see there are two parts to it, but eventually we will connect the two parts and we go find them na YouTube. We say we also have another channel. Let us not forget Fambulem today, na Sierra Leone 60th anniversary. And we host Sister Isata Kabia, who has been a fabulous, fabulous guest. Tomorrow we will have Brother Melvin Medziga with the Melvin Medziga show where they perform na the Den and Now Empire platform. We also get Brother Sankor, Alfred Sankor, Salon Cashbox will be on the platform with economic solutions on Thursday. On Saturday, we will repeat a program, an interview with Supermed on this platform being held with Dr. Samora Kamara with a re-air. It will be a repeat program on Saturday. And on Sunday, I will be back with a panel. Probably don't be surprised if you see Sister Isata Kabia again. Sister Isata, thank you very much and good night.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good night.